My name is Reginald DesRoches, and I am the Provost of Rice University and a professor of Civil and Environmental Engineering. I am a structural earthquake engineer, and I want to spend a few minutes talking about what I do as a structural earthquake engineer, but also my experience in traveling to Haiti following the earthquake in 2010. One of the lessons that I want to impart on you in this story is about the ties between history, society, and technology. In this case, on the face of it, the Haiti earthquake was a disaster resulting from the collapse of poorly built buildings. In fact, the story is much more complex and starts well over 200 years ago. Haiti is a country in the Caribbean and shares the island of Hispaniola with the Dominican Republic, and is just southeast of Cuba and around 600 miles from the coast of Florida. The 2010 Haiti earthquake was one of the largest natural disasters in modern times and certainly the most devastating in modern history in the Western Hemisphere. It was a magnitude 7.0 earthquake, resulting in an estimated 250,000 deaths and over 300,000 injuries. 1 in 10 people in the metropolitan area perished during the earthquake, and half of the population was left homeless. To put this earthquake in perspective, a similar sized earthquake occurred in the Bay Area over 30 years ago. I was a student at Berkeley at the time. You can see the huge difference in terms of the deaths, injuries, and homelessness. There is no doubt that Haiti's standing as one of the poorest countries in the Western Hemisphere contributed to the dramatic losses. As you can see from this slide, Haiti has a GDP of around $9 billion, an average annual income of about $790, and the average person lives on less than $2 per day. So, the Haiti earthquake begs some questions. Why was the 2010 Haiti earthquake so devastating? What were the underlying socioeconomic and environmental conditions that contributed to the disaster? What lessons can be learned from the earthquake? Attributing Haiti's experience with natural disasters to bad luck, or repeatedly using the phrase poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, erases the role of France and other foreign actors in stagnating the country's economy. Especially after the earthquake in 2010, mainstream discussion failed to identify key historical factors at the root of the tragedy. Days after the earthquake, Christian evangelist Pat Robertson claimed the disaster was a result of Haiti's 200-year-old pact with the devil to free themselves from France. When talking about Haiti, history has to be part of the conversation. Haiti's present is a direct result of centuries of oppression, colonialism, and foreign influence. While there are still many internal problems that stagnate Haiti, one has to take a deep look at the history to understand how Haiti got to where it is today. The Haitian Revolution was a successful insurrection by self-liberated slaves against French colonial rule in Saint-Domingue, now the sovereign state of Haiti. The revolt began on August 22, 1791, and ended in 1804 with the former colony's independence. It involved blacks, mulattoes, French, Spanish, and British participants, with the ex-slave Toussaint Louverture leading the group. The revolution was the only slave uprising that led to the founding of a state which was both free from slavery and ruled by non-whites and former captives. It is now widely seen as a defining moment in the history of the world and had numerous implications in the United States. Although it took over a decade of fighting for the Republic of Haiti to be born, it was still an uphill journey for the young nation. Gaining recognition from foreign countries, especially France and the United States, was a saga that played out for decades. Foreign countries largely shunned Haiti. The UK, France, and the US all waited for decades to grant recognition to Haiti. Toussaint Louverture approached the U.S. for its recognition and support in the early stages of the revolution, citing shared economic and political interest in the region. But the U.S. shied away from any formal declaration of support while continuing to trade with the nation. But the later years of the revolution, Napoleon had taken power in France, in contrast to previous Republican governors who actually abolished slavery in Saint-Domingue to keep power. Napoleon wanted to restore Saint-Domingue to its former glory. That meant reestablishing slavery and complete economic control. This plan was completely contrary to the U.S.'s anti-Europe position in North America, which would later be called the Monroe Doctrine. In the end, however, it was the fact that Toussaint and his men were able to defeat Napoleon that the United States was able to secure the Louisiana Purchase. Once it became clear to France that Saint-Domingue, the linchpin of their North American empire and a key commercial colony, was lost, they gave up hope on Louisiana. The U.S. purchased the Louisiana territory in 1803, 1 year before Haiti gained independence. Almost directly, Haiti's independence cleared the way for one of the biggest expansions of territory and slavery in the U.S. France recognized Haiti, but at what cost? This is the original text from King Charles X ordinance sent to Haiti in 1825. There are 3 important things to focus on. First, nowhere in the document did France use the name Haiti, the established name of the country for over 2 decades at that point. Instead, they refer to the French part of Santo Domingo, continuing to use colonial names and insist on some sort of French claim to the territory. Second, notice how the money is directed to former settlers, meaning white planters and plantation owners. This is an example of compensated emancipation, an idea common in this time that was a result of chattel slavery. In their minds, since they lost valuable property, they should be reimbursed. In reality, the millions of dollars Haiti gave to France did little to benefit former slave owners, as France identified thousands of beneficiaries who received payouts over many generations. Finally, let's draw our attention to the $150 million amount. The amount imposed on Haiti in 1825 totaled 150 million francs. In today's currency, that amounts to over $21 billion. 150 million was not a wholly random number, but France justified their claim by saying 150 was the annual revenue Saint-Domingue brought to France. While Saint-Domingue was rich, Haiti was not. Plantations were burned and destroyed, and without the cruel practice of slavery, productivity and cash exports were not nearly as high as colonial levels. 2 decades after independence, 150 million now was 3 times Haiti's annual GDP. As stated, Haiti was the crown jewel of the French Empire, and they priced it as such. To compare, the U.S. only paid $60 million for the Louisiana purchase, a territory 74 times that of Haiti. For decades, this debt loomed large and limited any sense of progress in Haiti. So let me transition now to the earthquake. I was part of the first reconnaissance team that traveled to Haiti following the earthquake in January of 2010. Our group arrived less than a week after the earthquake. We stayed in tents since most of the buildings were collapsed in the country. We spent 10 days visiting hundreds of buildings with the goal of determining whether or not buildings were safe to reoccupy following the earthquake. Here is a picture of a typical structure that we visited. It's a food warehouse that contained over 1,500 tons of food. We had to determine whether or not this structure, and many like it, were safe to reoccupy. These decisions were based on measurements that we took at the location and the overall assessment of the structural integrity of the buildings. Many of the buildings we assessed we deemed safe to reoccupy, even though they would likely not have been designated as such, except for the role that they played in feeding the population. We were also asked to look at the safety of a courthouse, shown here, that had collapsed during the earthquake. We later learned that the addresses of prisoners that had escaped were in this building. We had to weigh the ethical concern that although we knew that there were records of real prisoners and real criminals in this courthouse, there were likely records of political prisoners there also. The saddest part of the Haiti earthquake was the sheer number of children that died during the earthquake. Because the earthquake occurred during school hours, tens of thousands of children perished in the rubble, typically in unstable concrete buildings. This is a picture of a kindergarten where 43 children died during the earthquake. One of the many challenges facing Haiti is the deforestation that has occurred in the last few decades. The people of Haiti use wood as cooking fuel. You can see from this overhead photo the big difference in tree coverage between Haiti and the Dominican Republic, its neighbor to the east. As you can see from this picture also, this is a typical gingerbread home in Haiti, and these homes are made of wood, and they tend to be very light and flexible compared to concrete buildings. So you want to build structures using wood if possible because of its lightness and its ability to be flexible and ride out the earthquake. Unfortunately, because of the deforestation and the lack of wood in Haiti, many of the structures are made from the rigid, less flexible concrete, and you see that in terms of all the damage that occurred during the earthquake. While there was considerable suffering and death in Haiti, and many examples of poorly built structures failing, there was one major success story. The tallest building in Haiti is a 12-story headquarters of the local phone company that had over 500 people in the building at the time of the earthquake. I had the opportunity to stand on the roof of this building shortly after the earthquake. Everything around this building had collapsed, yet this structure had survived. I had the chance to spend time with the engineer that designed this building in Haiti, and he talked about how he convinced the officials to include several key earthquake-resistant measures in the building. Those measures ended up saving hundreds of lives, and now he realizes really the role that he was able to play by just doing some really, really simple but very key important measures in terms of including earthquake measures in that building. So I want to just leave you with some key lessons that I learned from this experience, the Haiti earthquake. One is to get outside of your comfort zone. When I was invited to travel to Haiti, I was very comfortable. I had been a professor for over a decade. I had a large research group. My research was very active and strong. I had 3 young children at home, and there were many concerns about the safety and health issues in Haiti at the time, right after the earthquake. However, I decided to go, and it was one of the most impactful activities, including the many subsequent trips that I took during my entire academic career. I learned a lot about myself, and I learned a lot about the role that engineers can play in making society better and safer. The second lessons are just that complex issues tend to not be black and white. They tend to have a very gray zone. I went to Haiti thinking it would be a very straightforward reconnaissance. Buildings collapsed because they were poorly built. There were so many other factors, environmental, social, economic, historical, that really contributed to that disaster being one of the worst in recent history. Finally, while I know you are coming to Rice at a very uncertain time in higher education and at Rice, you are coming to a place where you will get what I believe is the best undergraduate experience found anywhere. Our small student-to-faculty ratio allows us to do some things that most of our peers simply cannot. Our faculty are amongst the best in their fields and are engaging and creative. They take seriously the importance of the classroom experience. As a premier research institution, you will be exposed to the most cutting-edge topics and issues in your field of study. Finally, 2/3 of our students are involved in undergraduate research. I strongly encourage you to get involved in undergraduate research, student clubs, and other activities that will expand your horizons. Thank you.